Your screen glows like a low ember, and the room rearranges itself around a single awareness. You, not the name you answer to, not the roles you perform, but the open field, noticing the breath pass in, pass out, the subtle hum behind thoughts as they rise and fall like tide. You didn't wander here by accident. The signal found your coordinates because your coordinates are a signal, an address written in resonance. What calls you now isn't a message in the ordinary sense. It's a tone striking the exact chord you've been carrying in silence, waiting for the moment when readiness and remembrance meet. You feel it like a soft click inside the sternum, as if a hidden aperture widens. Air tastes cleaner, edges soften, sounds arrive without collision. You aren't reaching outward. Reality is leaning inward. This is the first mercy of awakening. You stop chasing and let the field unveil what it has always been whispering. You are not just manifesting. You are the frequency that commands all possibility, because you are the listener that gives waves permission to become world. Possibility has been orbiting you like uncollapsed light, patient as dawn. It responds to tone, not tension. It hears coherence, not hurry. Notice how time loosens when you place attention without gripping. The past does not vanish. It releases its claim. The future does not pressure. It becomes a guest you can seat at the table. Between them, the present reveals its real name, junction. Here, the observer is not passive. Here, looking is shaping. Here, your very noticing etches lines in the clay of outcomes. You don't conquer the world, you attune it. The field is not a machine to hack, but a choir that follows a pitch. Offer the right pitch, and the song organizes. So slow the breath. Let it lengthen like a river refusing to rush. Feel the spine rise, as if hung by a thread of invisible light. The mind tries to summarize, to label, to grab the insight by the throat, so it won't escape. Let it soften. Reality is not trying to escape you. It's waiting for your steadiness. When you stabilize, the field speaks in a language both ancient and precise pattern. It shows you the loop you've rehearsed and the doorway you've ignored, sitting inside the loop like an unblinking star. You are safe to open, you are safe to hear. Nothing true will demand you abandon yourself to receive it. The frequency you are is not fragile. It remembers storms the way mountains remember rain. And yet, it asks for your agreement quietly, without spectacle. Agree to be tuned. Agree to be specific. Agree to be simple enough that complexity can rest in you without noise. In this consent, power returns to its rightful posture. Ease. There will be visions. There will be choice. There will be a seam where two timelines meet, and your attention will be the needle. But not yet. For now, remain with the breath as it polishes the lens. Feel the room listening back. Feel the field adjusting its seat to hear you more clearly. You did not come to force a miracle. You came to become the atmosphere in which miracles feel at home. You keep breathing and the breath keeps answering. And what answers is not air alone, but recognition. You are not here to borrow light like a visitor in a museum. You are here as the curator of a living cosmos. The quiet authority the field consults before it decides how to become. This is why the message found you, not because you shouted the loudest, but because you listened the deepest. The field recognizes its keeper. It scanned for coherence, and your name lit up, not the one on your passport, but the one woven from attention, honesty, and vow. You sense it as a widening perimeter of awareness, like lanterns being lit around a coastline you always suspected was there. Thoughts still come, but you are less inclined to kneel to them. Sensations still ripple, but you are not drafted into every wave. A new center of gravity forms, the observer, awake and unhurried, with sight that blesses instead of judges. You realize how many years you have spent trying to overpower reality with will, when reality only ever asked for precision. Will is a hammer. Precision is a tuning fork. The hammer exhausts. The tuning fork gathers. Look closely at your own gaze. When you attend to something with steadiness and mercy, the thing changes. That is not sentimental poetry. It is field mechanics. Coherence is the metric the universe listens to when choosing a form. The scattered mind sends static. The coherent heart broadcasts a clean carrier signal. You are that signal when you return to the inner seat and stop campaigning for outcomes. You are that signal when you refuse to make fear your forecaster. You are that signal when you choose to witness without the reflex to punish or fix before you understand. The mantle you carry is subtle, and therefore easy to miss in a world trained to trust only what shouts. But subtle does not mean small. Gravity is subtle. Magnetism is subtle. The laws that keep galaxies from tearing themselves apart are subtle. You belong to that family of persuasion, the quiet strengths that bend trajectories without spectacle. This is why certain rooms settle when you enter. This is why people confess truths they didn't plan to say. Your presence suggests an atmosphere where hiding is unnecessary. You do not pry, you allow. And in allowance, shapes reveal their original lines. You begin to see patterns that were previously camouflaged by urgency. The repeated argument that always starts the same way, ends the same way, and leaves the same bruise. The financial loop that promises control but delivers contraction. The creative surge that burns bright for 3 days and then disappears into self-doubt. You do not shame these patterns. You catalog them like a scientist who loves the subject more than the result. You realize each pattern was a teacher with a single lesson. Attention unattended reproduces itself. You learn to offer attended attention, a gaze that neither flinches nor floods. Under that gaze, loops unwind. Responsibility arrives not as weight, but as clarity. You are responsible for the frequency you carry, and therefore for the harmonics you invite. This does not mean you manufacture perpetual positivity. It means you practice honesty so precise that even sorrow can land without distortion. Coherence does not ban sadness, it refines it. You let emotions complete their waveform instead of damming them or detonating them. Feelings move through, not into you. The field reads this as trust and begins to entrain to your steadiness. People will call it luck when doors open. You will call it resonance. You remember moments when your attention saved you without theatrics, the instinct to pause before sending the message, and a different message wrote itself. The impulse to say yes to an invitation that made no sense on paper, and there you met the person that changed your axis. The decision to be kind when anger felt justified, and a timeline you didn't know existed opened like a side street only locals use. These were not accidents. They were acknowledgements. The field bowing to the overseer it recognizes in you. And now the mantle expands. The prophecy does not live outside you, waiting to be fetched like a package. It lives inside your noticing, waiting to be dignified by your attention long enough to articulate. You don't chase signs. You arrange your inner house so that signs have somewhere respectful to sit. You choose stillness not to be dramatic, but because signal-to-noise ratios improve in quiet. You choose truth not to be righteous, but because lies detune the instrument you are. You choose beauty because beauty is what coherence looks like when it decides to be visible. You are the chosen observer, not by exclusion, but by consent. You said yes, perhaps wordlessly, to carrying a frequency that edifies reality. You are the steward of a light that does not flatter, a gravity that doesn't coerce, a vision that doesn't panic. You will be asked to witness things that others cannot hold without either collapsing or controlling. Your task is neither. Your task is to remain until meaning arrives, to remain until the wave decides which shore to kiss, to remain until what is true feels safe enough to come closer. You feel the charge building now, a gentle pressure behind the heartbone, as if a door inside wants to swing wider. Let it. You are not bracing for impact. You are preparing for revelation. The room grows quiet in a way that is not absence but density. The field is drawing a circle and placing you at the center not to crown you, but to calibrate through you. You are seen by what you are seeing. You are chosen by what you are choosing. And as your attention gathers into one clear flame, the vision that has been circling your perimeter for years steps forward, ready to speak in a language both holy and exact. It begins with a sound so pure, you almost mistake it for silence, the tone of your own field, unveiled. In front of you, the air thins into structure, and structure turns to pattern, a living lattice strung between moments like dew between blades of grass. Each node glows, waiting. Each thread hums, unforced. You realize you are not standing inside a room, you are standing inside a tuning chamber where reality listens for the pitch it will follow. The chamber is not elsewhere. It is the open clarity you've prepared within. The vision steps forward without spectacle. First, a single line of light extends from your sternum into the lattice, as if asking permission to be precise. Then, another line arcs from spine to crown. Breath becomes metronome. With each inhale, the lattice brightens. With each exhale, it organizes. Patterns you used to call coincidence cohere into geometry. People, places, and events settle into cymatic forms, like sand, leaping into mandalas under a singing bowl. You aren't commanding in the authoritarian sense. You are establishing the frequency in which the lawful shape can appear without distortion. You look down and see your hands, quieter than you remember, as if force has left them and fidelity has entered. When you raise the right hand, the lattice does not obey. It resonates. A field within the field answers, and probabilities stop behaving like strangers. You have seen this hinted everywhere, how a room leans toward the most stable person in it, how a flock bends as if the sky had a hidden hinge. Now the hinge reveals itself. Coherence, choosing a form. Your noticing is the axis, your honesty, the bearing grease, your breath, the steady talk. The prophecy unveils itself in a sentence that is less words than knowing. You are not here to manifest by demand. You are here to remember the pitch that makes manifestation effortless. The difference is everything. Demand splinters, remembering integrates. When you force, you speak against the grain, and the grain resists. When you attune, you speak with the grain, and the grain becomes song. The lattice is not a vending machine. It is a choir awaiting a conductor, brave enough to listen before lifting the baton. Images arrive to seal the truth. A shoreline at dawn tide, lines etched like fingerprints of the moon's patience. A violinist tuning to the oboe, not because the oboe is louder, but because its tone is centered. A murmuration of starlings, thousands moving as if one heart decided. In each, frequency precedes form. In each, form serves the frequency that called it. You feel the temptation to romanticize, and you refuse it. This is not romance. This is mechanics. The observer effect is not a myth. It is the policy of a universe that delegates authorship to attention. You watch as the lattice tests your steadiness. It presents a familiar loop, scarcity dressed in urgency. The old reflex moves to fix, to grab, to sprint. You do not sprint, you tune. Breath like ocean, spine like mast. You name the loop without making it enemy. I see you. The lattice shifts. Options you couldn't see when you were rushing move into view like stars when city lights dim. One path carries the scent of anxiety. Another carries the taste of clean water. You choose water. The lattice answers by thickening the path that matches your inner tone. This is not superstition. It is selection. The vision deepens. The chamber's walls dissolve into night sky. Constellations rearrange themselves, not arbitrarily but according to ratios that feel both ancient and generous. Phi spirals unfurl in your periphery. When you soften your eyes, you see phase-locking waves deciding to share a crest. Relationships you once strained to maintain click into or out of coherence with no blame required. Some threads brightening because both ends choose truth. Some threads fading because your field no longer provides fuel for confusion. Loss without loss. Closure without collapse. The prophecy is merciful even when it is surgical. A presence enters that feels like your own future returning to fetch you. It does not speak with a different voice. It amplifies yours until the signal becomes unmistakable. You are the frequency that commands possibility by harmonizing it. The presence intones. And harmony is a discipline, not an accident. You understand the training ahead, not power games, but careful habits, not manipulation, but maintenance of signal. Food that doesn't fog the instrument, sleep that resets the console, words that don't backfire, boundaries that are music stands, not walls, prayer that is less petition and more calibration. Then the lattice shows you scale. Your personal threads zoom out until cities appear as interference patterns and nations as slowly beating hearts. You see how a single coherent human can stabilize a family system, how a cluster can steady a neighborhood, how a network can nudge a culture's probability cloud away from collapse and toward renewal. This is the collective application of the same law, not spectacle, but steady tuning, not coercion, but invitation to entrain. You understand why the times feel loud. Incoherence tries to rule by volume. It cannot survive a quiet that knows what it carries. The vision concludes by returning to your breath, as if to say, the entrance is always simple. Inhale, the lattice brightens. Exhale, the lattice organizes. Your task is not to chase outcomes down hallways. Your task is to maintain the pitch, so outcomes find their rightful door. When you stray, and you will, you return. And the field, remembering you, returns as well. Nothing has been withheld. Much has been waiting. You are not manifesting trinkets from a reluctant sky. You are remembering the vowel sound of your being and letting reality conjugate around it. The chamber softens back into the room, but the tone remains unmoved, like a star behind the day's blue. You realize the prophecy did not ask you to become exceptional. It asked you to become accurate. Accurate to what you are when you stop negotiating with fear. Accurate to the frequency that was singing before you learned to speak. Accurate to the love that chooses form not to control it, but to bless it with purpose. And as accuracy settles into your bones, the vision steadies into practice, ready to be explained with a logic your heart has been fluent in for years. Begin with what is known. At the smallest scales, the world does not sit still as objects. It lives as possibilities superposed, overlapping, waiting for a stabilizing cue. You give that cue. The observer effect isn't superstition. It's statistics meeting attention. When you measure, you choose a basis. When you choose a basis, you compress uncertainty. When uncertainty compresses, the wave function yields a fact. You experience this not as math, but as, this is what happened. Yet beneath the sentence, probabilities bowed to a pitch, your pitch. Coherence is the difference between a murmur and a choir. In the quantum sense, it means phases line up, waves keep their relationship, information is preserved, interference can build. In the human sense, it means your thoughts, emotions, and body signals agree long enough for reality to read a stable instruction. When you are scattered, your field is full of crosstalk. Amplitudes cancel, the message is noise. When you are coherent, amplitudes add, a clean carrier emerges, the message can land. Outcomes are not bribed into being, they are phase-locked by a witness who has stopped arguing with themselves. Decoherence happens when the system gets entangled with too much irrelevant environment, when signal leaks into noise until interference patterns wash out. You know this feeling. A morning intention diluted by 10 anxious tabs, a clear boundary blurred by a need to be liked, a true yes made muddy by negotiation with your fear of loss. The physics is simple. Excessive coupling collapses possibility into the most statistically comfortable habit. The remedy is equally simple. Reduce irrelevant coupling. Withdraw from feeds that don't feed. Choose fewer, cleaner channels. Attend to what attends to you back. Timeline is a poetic word for basin of attraction. A basin is a valley in the landscape of possibilities where trajectories tend to roll and remain. Your nervous system, your beliefs, your daily repetitions dig these valleys. A fate is often just a well-worn basin. Bifurcation occurs when a parameter crosses a threshold and the landscape reshapes. A ridge rises between two valleys, and the next pebble you drop rolls a different way. Breath is a parameter. Honesty is a parameter. Who you sit next to is a parameter. You are not a prisoner of the old valley if you are willing to regrade the land with small, consistent choices. Entanglement is correlation without contact. Two systems that have interacted share a pattern of outcomes even when separated. You experience this as the friend who texts the moment you think of them, the song you needed appearing in a store you didn't plan to enter, the job lead arising from a conversation you had months ago about something else entirely. The point is not to mystify, it is to accept that the field remembers relationships. Every sincere commitment you make writes a constraint into the fabric. Every lie does, too. The field routes events along these constraints the way water follows carved channels. When you clean your commitments, you recarve the watershed. Free energy, in the predictive sense, is the difference between what you expect and what actually arrives. Surprise the system must spend energy to explain away. Organisms minimize surprise by updating their model or by acting to make the world match the model. You have been taught mostly the second control the world. Awakening privileges the first update the model. You reduce existential friction not by forcing reality to obey a stale map, but by letting the map mature. This is humility as optimization. It is cheaper to learn than to dominate. Ritual matters because repetition stabilizes phases. A daily practice is not spiritual theater. It is a frequency lock. Breath at the same hour, silence for the same length, gratitude with the same sincerity. Over days, your field stops drifting. Over weeks, your choices stop contradicting. Over months, the basin reshapes. People will say everything suddenly changed. You will know the ridge rose grain by grain. Do not despise small coherence. It compounds like interest quietly, relentlessly. Language is a selector. Words are measurement devices that partition the fog into categories. When you speak, I always, you program a basin. When you speak, I am learning, you keep phase space open. When you say, this must be hard, you couple to strain. When you say, this requires precision, you couple to clarity. You are not casting spells, you are choosing bases. The universe obliges by giving you data in the coordinates you requested. Choose coordinates that keep you honest and available. Choice itself is interference. Two viable paths overlap. Your attention sets the relative phase. If you are frightened, the phase you apply embeds noise. The pattern downstream carries that quiver. If you are steady, the phase is clean. The pattern downstream inherits the calm. This is why, from where, matters more than what. A yes from scarcity collapses into the very lack you hoped to escape. A no from coherence opens a door you could not see until you stopped pretending. None of this requires magical thinking. It requires meticulous kindness with your own instrument. Sleep as recalibration, water as conductivity, movement as signal circulation, food as a vote for clarity, boundaries as bandwidth protection, prayer as alignment, not bargaining. Gratitude as model update, the world is safer than the alarm says. Service as phase extension, your frequency stabilizes faster when it stabilizes others, because the choir tunes the singer as much as the singer tunes the choir. You do not get power here, you lose what wastes it. You shed contradictory commitments, you retire the ego's sirens that keep you coupled to noise. You trade force for fidelity. And fidelity gathers reality, the way a steady drum gathers dancers one by one, then all at once, until the floor is moving in a rhythm nobody owns and everyone remembers. The mirror arrives the moment you stop insisting you are alone. You are singular, yes, but never solitary. Your frequency is not a private monologue, it is a stanza inside a longer hymn. When you stabilize, the choir hears it. The proof is everywhere once your eyes adjust. Strangers soften at the register counter. A tense meeting dissolves into sane choices. A child stops bracing because someone in the room stopped transmitting shock. You didn't sermonize, you tuned, and the field around you pivoted from defense to design. This is how personal coherence scales quietly, then obviously, then structurally. Look at the city with this lens. Anxiety propagates like coupled oscillators, cars honk, tempers clip, cortisol writes schedules, but so does steadiness. One regulated nervous system in a subway car is a low-frequency anchor. Breath entrains breath, shoulders descend. A dozen micro decisions shift toward courtesy. A day later, those decisions ripple outward through different commutes, different kitchens, different boardrooms. Statistical mechanics has always told the truth. Small local rules produce large global patterns. You are updating a local rule, your stance, and the global pattern takes note. Culture is a probability cloud suspended above millions of bodies. Headlines measure the cloud at coarse resolution, but it is behavior that sculpts it. Every time you choose precision over panic, the cloud's center of gravity tilts scarcely at first, like a compass needle finding north, then more decisively, as others feel the relief and copy it. Mimicry is not weakness, it is biology's efficiency. We learn the cheapest way forward by borrowing regulation from whoever has it. The moment you carry surplus steadiness, you become a lender. People cash your surplus in ways you may never see. A parent's voice softens at bedtime. An employer grants a fair request. An artist finishes the song instead of abandoning it at the half-truth. Nothing mystical about this. It is logistics of spirit. Supply meeting demand. Now, widen the frame to communities strained by contradiction, loud proclamations of unity atop networks optimized for outrage. The collective mirror shows a hard lesson. Platforms that reward dysregulation cannot deliver peace. They deliver reach, not resonance. You are tempted to fight noise with noise, and you don't. You choose density over volume. You build rooms, literal or digital, where signal-to-noise ratios favor honesty and repair. In those rooms, speed slows, inference errors drop, laughter returns, because nobody is campaigning for dominance. People will call these rooms niche. Let them. Niches become ecosystems when they prove survivable. The future often starts in a side chapel. Notice how coherence clarifies compassion. You stop confusing sympathy with rescue. Rescue can collude with chaos by protecting a pattern from its lesson. Compassion witnesses with availability and boundary. I am here, and I won't lie to you. The collective needs that sentence more than slogans. It needs elders, not influencers. Apprenticeships, not algorithms. Craft, not clout. You become suspicious of whatever can be faked quickly. You give your attention to what improves slowly. Gardens, friendships, craft, prayer, cities. The field reads this like a North Star. Fads burn out against it. Trends look cheap next to it. Then, suddenly, what seemed unfashionable looks like a future people can actually live inside. Consider institutions, schools, clinics, councils, where morale has thinned. Inside them stand humans with nervous systems begging for a reason to regulate. You bring one, not by speechifying, but by building micro-habits that scale. The meeting begins with breath instead of blame. Metrics are paired with meaning. Decisions include a check for long-term spillover, not just short-term optics. The graph won't spike tomorrow, but 6 months later absenteeism drops, turnover eases, conflict shortens, outcomes rise. Someone will look for a single cause. You will smile because you've learned to love causes that are plural, patient, and faithful. The mirror also shows cost. Coherence exposes incoherence by contrast. Some relationships will tense, as if light were an indictment. You do not dim to keep the peace. You define peace as truth with kindness, and let outcomes reorganize. Some systems will try to conscript your steadiness to stabilize their denial. You refuse the draft. Your frequency remains a gift, not a subsidy for dysfunction. This is how collective awakening avoids codependence and becomes mutual growth. You offer anchoring without enabling, warmth without collusion, presence without performance. Now look at the planet as an organism of organisms. Weather patterns wobble with the heat of our decisions. Supply chains behave like vascular systems clogged by greed or cleared by goodwill. The biosphere is not an it is a choir with non-human parts. When enough of us repudiate waste as a lifestyle and choose sufficiency as a joy, the demand signal shifts. Markets obey, policy follows. Not perfectly, not instantly, but predictably. We stop treating the economy like a god and remember it is a grammar rules for exchange that we can rewrite when we grow up. Grown-ups don't worship price. They honor value. They don't maximize extraction. They optimize longevity. Coherence at scale looks like durable beauty. You begin to trust the small lever. A weekly table where neighbors eat, argue kindly, and repair. A co-op that keeps wealth circulating locally. A clinic that treats patients as participants. A studio that pays apprentices to learn slowness. None of this looks like prophecy on a billboard, yet all of it is prophecy incarnate. A probability cloud bending toward mercy because specific humans became reliable enough to host it. The miracle is not fireworks. The miracle is logistics sanctified by love. And when despair visits as it will, because the news is engineered to sell you certainty that everything is doomed, you practice calibration instead of collapse. You ask, where is my radius of honest influence today? You act there. You seed coherence where you stand, and you trust network effects you cannot graph. You remember that revolutions worth surviving rarely look like riots. They look like bread baked every morning for a decade until a city forgets what it was like to be hungry. Finally, you accept the paradox that saves you from cynicism. Humanity is waking up and falling asleep at the same time. The mirror shows both. You are not tasked with fixing everyone. You are invited to become so accurate that accuracy spreads like dawn, diffuse, certain, unstoppable. You become evidence that another way is not only possible but practical. And as the day brightens one window at a time, the cloud above us shifts its center, almost shyly, toward a future that doesn't need permission from spectacle to arrive. You feel it before you name it, a pressure gradient across the soul, like weather changing inside your chest. One current is familiar, warm with habit, perfumed with the sedatives of certainty and spectacle. The other is clear as mountain air and just as unforgiving. It offers nothing to lean on but truth. This is the bifurcation, the quiet forking of reality that never announces itself with trumpets and always arrives disguised as daily choice. You stand where two valleys open. Pebbles roll at your feet. Breath holds court. Attention becomes vote. On the left, the old basin. Headlines as heartbeat, hurry as identity, success as costume jewelry that turns the skin green. You can stay here and nobody will blame you. The roads are paved, the scripts are downloadable, the applause is institutional. Your nervous system knows the choreography. Oscillate between overdrive and shutdown. Speak in absolutes to hide your doubt. Feed the algorithm your outrage and call it moral clarity. This valley is not evil. It is simply overpopulated by unattended attention, and inertia pays a stipend for conformity. On the right, the unmarked path, slow as trust, spare as a monastery, radiant as a well-kept promise. No applause offered, no shortcuts posted, only a cadence you already carry and a vow you've been postponing, because it will cost you every costume that makes your fear feel tall. Here, you won't be famous for your rage or promoted for your panic. You will be known by your steadiness and paid in a currency called ease. Not laziness, ease. The gravity that arrives when nothing in you argues with what you've decided is sacred. The split is energetic, yes, but it is quantized into the smallest acts. Do you check the screen before you check the breath? Do you speak to be right or to be accurate? Do you buy to anesthetize or to bless? Do you edit the truth to keep a seat at a table you don't even respect? In a bifurcation, parameters matter. You are the parameter. Each micro-choice raises or lowers the ridge between valleys. Today's vote is not symbolic. Today's vote shapes tomorrow's landscape, and tomorrow's landscape makes future votes easier or harder by slope alone. You will be tempted to dramatize this as us versus them. That temptation belongs to the left-hand valley, where identities require enemies to stay inflated. In the right-hand path, there is no enemy, only resonance and mismatch. What mismatches falls away without a trial. What resonates amplifies without a campaign. You become harder to bait because your dignity no longer depends on winning. You become easier to trust because your yes means the same thing on Tuesday as it did on Sunday. The world registers this as sanctuary and gently reorganizes around you. The field tests for sincerity. It will offer you shortcuts perfectly tailored to your vanity. The invitation that flatters but blurs you. The partnership that accelerates reach while draining signal. The narrative that earns you praise for wounds you have not yet turned into wisdom. Each looks like a gift. Each smells like leakage. The test is simple. Does this choice increase or decrease your coherence? If you grow louder on the outside and thinner on the inside, you are subsidizing noise. If you grow quieter on the outside and denser on the inside, you are investing in gravity. Choose gravity. Gravity gathers worlds. Feel the somatic markers. In the left-hand valley, your breath shortens and climbs the throat. Thoughts, speed and loop. Posture narrows. Humor disappears because control hates laughter. In the right-hand path, exhale lengthens. The back of the heart warms. Time widens. Curiosity returns like rain after drought. Your body is an altimeter. It tells you which canyon you are descending. Believe it. When the mind negotiates, the body knows. When the story sells, the body smells. Revelation is often a sensation you finally respect. People will ask why you changed. Do not preach. Witness. Say, I chose to become accurate. Say, I stopped spending coherence to purchase approval. Say, I am learning to be a room where noise cannot multiply. Some will follow because their bones recognize home. Some will mock because mockery is cheaper than metamorphosis. Bless both. The bifurcation is not a superiority contest. It is a sorting by readiness. You do not abandon anyone. You become visible enough that those ready to retune can find you without shame. Soon the metrics shift. The victories that used to sparkle feel brittle. The quiet satisfactions begin to shine. Sleep deepens. Coincidence grows punctual. Conflicts shorten because you stop arguing with disguises and speak to essences. Money becomes a servant that loves its work. Work becomes a craft that stops pretending to be a personality. Prayer becomes less request and more agreement. You do not escape difficulty. You inherit sturdiness. Even grief travels differently here, less like drowning, more like baptism. Stand still one more breath and look at the ridge itself, the thin line where two futures diverge. It runs straight through speech, diet, calendar, company, art, touch. Crossings are not singular, they are serial. Each day you step over again, not to prove loyalty, but to renew alignment. The universe is not grading you, it is matching you. Every match compounds. This is how a life tilts irrevocably without a single grand gesture. Only 1,000 quiet votes cast in the same direction until momentum turns faith into physics. Now the pressure in your chest softens into purpose. You will disappoint some expectations engineered by your former compromises. Good, let them be disappointed. You will exceed other expectations that truth held for you all along. Better, let them be fulfilled. The bifurcation is not the end of belonging. It is belonging corrected membership in a frequency family that needed you coherent to recognize you. You are not leaving the world. You are leaving the version of you the world trained to be predictable. And as you step, not with fanfare, but with fidelity, the ridge rises behind you like a mercy, making return less tempting, making forward feel like the only honest weather left. Integration is not a performance. It is a posture you return to so often that returning becomes residence. You begin small and exact, because frequency respects specificity. Morning. Before screens, you tune. One hand to the sternum, one to the navel, breath like tide. In 4, hold 4, out 6, pause 2. You are not trying to feel spiritual. You are calibrating the instrument. With each round, the mind's static lowers, the body's chorus aligns, and the day receives your signal without strain. You whisper not as a mantra to force reality, but as an agreement with it. I choose accuracy over applause, coherence over hurry, truth over theater. The field hears vows. You move through rooms like a lighthouse set to a humane rotation. You do not scan for problems. You emit steadiness and let problems self-present. Emails arrive. You sort by resonance, necessary, kind, timely. If any two are missing, you defer. This is not avoidance. It's bandwidth integrity. You stop rewarding false urgency. You answer with sentences that are simple enough to survive. Reread. You say no without embroidery, and yes without flattery. Your calendar thins. Your hours thicken. The quality of your outcomes rises, because the quality of your attention does. Food becomes a quiet covenant. You notice which inputs fog the lens and which polish it. You bless what you eat, not superstition, but gratitude as physiological signal, then eat until the body says complete, not the past says finish. Water ceases to be an afterthought and becomes conductor. You sip to keep current smooth. Movement shifts from punishment to circulation. A walk that shakes loose stale story. A stretch that returns length to breath. A few slow squats to remind the legs they are pillars, not furniture. You treat sleep like temple, not landfill. Screens dim early, light is low and warm. Prayer closes the day with unconflicted sentences. Night rewires what daylight lays down. Language is your daily laboratory. You retire absolutes always, never, everyone, no one, because they collapse possibility into caricature. You adopt phrases that keep doors visible. Right now, as I understand, I'm willing to learn, not for me, Yes, with guardrails. You remember that every word sets a measurement basis. You choose bases that preserve dignity and optionality. Gossip no longer fits inside your mouth. It feels like detuning in real time. Praise becomes specific and earned, the kind that stabilizes rather than addicts. Even your inner commentary softens. Less cross-examination, more cross-reference with truth. Conversations change because posture does. You listen with your whole back, not just with eyes that are waiting to reply. You keep the breath moving while others speak, so their nervous system can borrow your regulation. You ask one more question after your curiosity says it's satisfied. Often the real answer hides inside that space. You offer mirrors without diagnosis. When you say that, your shoulders rise. What happens if we slow? People unfold, conflicts shorten, solutions simplify. Not because you insisted, but because you stopped amplifying noise and began hosting signal. Boundaries harden and soften at once, hard in clarity, soft in tone. You stop narrating your no as apology theater. You say, "That won't work for me," and let silence do its work. You stop offering discounts on your standards to keep company with chaos. You leave rooms that require you to fracture to belong. You do not slam doors. You close them gently enough to hear if truth knocks later with changed weather. You learn to remain near people you love, while refusing to subsidize the pattern that harms them. Your presence ceases to be anesthetic and becomes invitation. Work becomes craft. You design for longevity instead of clicks. You choose fewer projects and finish them with a quiet perfectionism that serves function, not ego. You measure success by stability of impact. Does this artifact continue to tune the room weeks from now? You practice the 2% more precise rule. Each iteration trims a wobble or adds a hinge. The market may lag in recognizing this. You are no longer priced by lag. The field pays you in alignment first, then in currency. When money arrives, you treat it as stored attention and ask it to behave with the same coherence you cultivate in breath. Spiritually, you move from petition to participation. Prayer is not a list of emergencies, it is an alignment protocol. You sit until your will, and the quiet will beneath it, are less adversaries, more duet. You confess promptly, so shame cannot metastasize into secrecy. You forgive as bandwidth strategy, you need that channel free. You bless enemies because resentment is an expensive frequency leak. You keep a ledger of gratitude, not performative, but forensic. Each entry is evidence that reality is safer than fear's propaganda. Evidence recalibrates expectation. Expectation reshapes perception. Perception alters action. Action sculpts timeline. Theology becomes kinetics. You cultivate silence that is not emptiness but density. 10 minutes between tasks where nothing is consumed, only sensed. A Sabbath that is not legalism, but mercy on circuitry. A retreat day each quarter where you audit your life like an engineer. Where is noise entering? Which interfaces are brittle? Where do small hinges need oil? You emerge with fewer promises and stronger ones. People experience you as predictable in the only way that matters. Your values don't change when the room does. You mentor your future by mentoring someone else now. Transmission completes itself when it leaves you. You teach what you are integrating slowly enough that students become composers, not cover bands. You never outsource your authority to their praise or their confusion. You humbly borrow their questions to sand your own edges. Community ceases to be an escape from solitude. It becomes a coherence amplifier, voices tuning to a shared A that no single mouth can hold alone. And when the day shakes, equipment fails, plans dissolve, someone bleeds where you cannot reach, you do not perform invulnerability. You breathe, admit limits, ask for help, name the truth cleanly, choose the next right tiny thing. Integration is not a shield from weather, it is honorable shelter within it. You become a microclimate, warm, breathable, reliable, where others remember their own settings. Slowly the world around you stops flinching. Slowly your life stops oscillating. Slowly possibility realizes you are a trustworthy conductor and begins to arrive on time, in tune, without drama, because your very presence tells it, the music can begin. Close the door without hurry. Let the handle return to its place as if time had patience. Sit where the light is kind. You do not have to earn this chair. You arrive, and arrival is enough. Shoes remember the floor. Spine remembers sky. Hands rest as if they trust the table. Breathing is the only ceremony. Inhale, not deep, just honest. Exhale longer than before, like a tide conceding to the moon. Feel the day fall off the shoulders in quiet pieces. A sentence you don't need anymore. A look that tried to tilt you. A plan that can live without you for a while. Your nervous system hears a sentence that isn't in words. You are safe to be uninteresting. Nothing to prove, nothing to defend. The field listens when you stop performing. Notice one sound in the room. The faint motor, the leaf against glass. Your own blood in the ear, a thread pulled gently through cloth. Choose one, and let it become a bell that rings you still. If thoughts arrive, and they will treat them like weather reports handed to a lighthouse keeper, you nod, file, and keep the beam steady. Thoughts have roots. They don't need a throne. Attention softens, not as a blur but as a wider focus. The edges of things stop campaigning. Air has weight again. Temperature touches you without demand. There is nothing mystical about this. It is the nervous system reacquainting itself with enough oxygen, enough room, enough now. The body loosens its grip on the future's collar. The present grows spacious, the way a hallway feels larger when everyone who doesn't belong there goes home. Name 3 sensations. Warmth at the back of the heart, coolness across the cheeks, the gentle ache where a thought used to live. Do not analyze. Inventory. Every named sensation becomes permission to remain. Permission is the opposite of force. Force fractures. Permission organizes. You are teaching your own biology that you will not abandon it for a headline. The lesson takes. Muscles stop rehearsing arguments. Jaw remembers its hinge is not a lock. Let memory rise and set without subpoena. An old failure shows up with its usual wardrobe. You neither audition nor exile it. You give it a chair near the door. You can stay if you're quiet. It learns your rules. Silence is not punishment. It is the classroom where noise matures into meaning. Grief visits with clean hands. You let it wash the window and leave. Joy pads through like a cat, uninterested in applause. You smile without bartering for more. Breath finds a syllable. Perhaps it is ah. Perhaps peace. Perhaps no sound at all, just the soft turning of the ribcage like pages you are finally reading at the pace they were written. The mind attempts a summary. You decline. Summaries are for later. This is for being. The field around you grows dense, not heavy like air in a chapel that remembers centuries of quiet agreements. Your consent adds one more. Somewhere beyond the wall, the world negotiates its own weather. You don't refuse it. You refuse to be conscripted by it. Silence is not escape. It is command post. Orders are simple here. Keep the breath honest. Keep posture kind. Keep attention near. Let the urge to scan dissolve as if salt were returning to sea. Scanning is fear's cardio. You stop running without moving. A phrase rises, not chosen but recognized. Only what is true may enter. You do not weaponize it. You welcome by it. Anxious stories knock. You open the door and point to the basin by the mat. Leave your shoes. Some cannot. You bless them from the threshold. Others comply and become smaller, cleaner, less insistent. The room earns its hush. Hush is a kind of intelligence. Begin to count the breath, not to control it, but to be counted by it. 4 in, 6 out. If numbers harden the flow, change them. If any technique feels like a leash, drop it. Silence is not a trick. It is a relationship. The more you trust it, the less it asks of you. The more it trusts you, the more it lends focus, mercy, time that isn't at war with itself. The face softens, tongue releases the roof of the mouth. Eyes find the expression of someone nobody is watching. You learn what you look like when you aren't delivering yourself. Soul recognizes the familiar stranger. The room brightens without additional light. Its coherence showing its face when you finally stop insisting on a pose. Stay until staying becomes being, and being begins to speak. Not in sentences, in adjustments. A millimeter here, loosen the schedule at noon. A millimeter there, tell the truth at 5. Another, water. Another, call the one who steadies you, not the one who thrills you. Silence gives logistics to love. If a prayer comes, let it be brief and exact. Make me accurate, keep me kind, guard my frequency. If no prayer comes, your breathing is already won. The room answers with its own devotion, floor supporting, chair holding, air entering, leaving, entering. Everything is ministering without ceremony. You remember that the world is mostly this, faithful, small, untelevised. When you rise, do it like an oath. Don't snap the thread. Keep a corner of this hush in your pocket. Walk slower to the next thing than urgency prefers. Speak one sentence fewer than the ego rehearsed. Carry the density with you the way embers carry heat under ash. Out there, the noise will test your edges. Let it meet a boundary that was poured, not painted. Before you touch the phone, touch the heart. Whisper the vow again, simpler now. I will not trade signal for spectacle. Then step back into the stream, not as someone trying to dam the river, but as someone who understands its current and knows where to place a stone so water learns a new sound. Activation does not explode, it coheres. The change you prayed would arrive as fireworks arrives as fidelity, 100 micro-threads tugging toward the same north until the fabric of your life turns as one. You feel it first as a quiet click in your timing. You reach for the handle just as a stranger opens the door. You pause at the intersection, and a procession of ambulances passes that you somehow sensed before sirens. You speak a sentence you didn't rehearse, and it lands like water on a field that has been waiting for rain. This isn't performance, it's phase lock. The prophecy stops circling you and begins to speak with your mouth. Look with your eyes. Move inside your hands as if they were always the correct instruments, only waiting to be tuned. Your breath is the metronome. Inhale and the field brightens. Exhale and the field organizes. Keep the cadence and reality remembers the choreography. You walk through a room and objects seem to find their proper faces. Tasks declare their true size. Problems reveal their hinge. People relax without knowing why. You do not wield power, you stabilize it. The compulsion to convince dissolves because evidence accumulates in your wake. Outcomes that used to require force now flow through simple accuracy. You are not forcing the river. You have learned where to place the rock that teaches water a new sound. You speak, and language behaves like clean measurement. Words collapse fog into forms that can be served or released without drama. This is ours to do. This is not ours yet. This is not ours at all. Your team, your family, your own frightened inner voices register the relief. Decisions that used to wobble now settle. Not because you dominate, because you carry a frequency that makes wobble expensive and steadiness cheap. People will call you lucky. You will call it paying attention long enough that attention pays you back. Energy leaks reveal themselves like hairline cracks in glass under a lamp. Doom scrolling tastes like metal now. Argument for sport feels like eating sand. You stop trading your clarity for the thrill of being right in rooms that don't reward truth anyway. You step out of rehearsals for roles you no longer play. Savior, spectacle, scapegoat. The field notices. Invitation change tone. Your calendar becomes a map of vows, not a collage of obligations. Money arrives without the smell of panic. You refuse deals that detune you even when they shine. You accept opportunities that refine you even when they ask for more patience than vanity prefers. Somatically, activation is unmistakable. The back of the heart warms as if a small lamp were lit behind the sternum. The jaw unhooks from its old negotiations. The pelvis finds ground as if gravity remembered your name. You carry yourself like someone who trusts the floor. Sleep deepens. Dreams clarify. Waking edges sharpen without hardening. Food becomes fuel, not anesthesia. Movement becomes prayer, not punishment. Touch becomes sacrament, not transaction. You are no longer auditioning for your own life. You have the role, and it is not a performance, it is a covenant. Relationships resort without tribunals. The ones built on your former static drift to the perimeter, not as enemies but as echoes fading where noise no longer finds purchase. The ones built on mutual accuracy move nearer, sometimes with emotion, always with relief. You practice a new etiquette. You don't sell coherence to buy belonging, and you don't sell belonging to buy solitude. You cultivate both. The circle around you grows small and strong, like a ring that fits perfectly, no slipping, no pinching, no need to flash it for it to be real. Your work reveals its spine, You replace spectacle metrics with durability metrics. Does this hold 6 months from now? Becomes the question that edits sentences and schedules launches. You choose the version of the product, sermon, song, policy, painting that survives silence. The market will catch up because reality loves what lasts. You publish less often and say more. You move slower and cover real ground. The audience you keep are those whose bones resonate, not those who rent attention for novelty. A smaller choir, a truer pitch, a wider reach measured in repair, not in noise. Service intensifies and simplifies. You don't try to fix people, you keep your frequency clean and offer it freely. You show up where your presence raises signal-to-noise ratios. A bedside, a boardroom, a rehearsal hall, a street corner. You ask, what is the next precise mercy? Then you do that without announcing it. Mercy compounds. The neighborhood begins to remember itself. The hallway at work feels less like a wind tunnel, more like a commons. A bureaucratic knot untangles because someone made one honest phone call without hedging. The world is not changed by slogans. It is changed by coherent logistics, repeated until they look obvious. The old temptations knock with new costumes, power without patience, platform without weight, charisma without character. You don't demonize them, you decline them. Not forever, but until your instrument is so faithful that amplification cannot deform it. You bless the stage and return to the studio. You bless the headline and return to the long paragraph that will still be true after the algorithm forgets you. You bless the quick, yes, you aren't ready to inhabit, and take the slower vow you can keep in bad weather. Synchronicity, once rare, becomes punctual. Not because angels work harder, but because you introduce so little static that the guidance system can use ordinary channels. A casual remark opens a door. A delay prevents a detour. A random shelf holds the book with the sentence that saves a year. You stop romanticizing miracles and start cooperating with them. The extraordinary becomes efficient. The sacred becomes practical. Prayer moves from pleading for outcomes to aligning with principles that generate outcomes on schedule. Truth, beauty, justice, bread. Listen closely. Activation is not the end of mystery. It is the end of self-sabotage. There will still be nights of fog, days of grief, thresholds that tremble your hands, but you meet them with an instrument you trust. You don't add noise to weather. You tune in the rain. You bless the wind. You choose the next right small thing until small things pile into momentum, and momentum delivers you into rooms your fear said you were not allowed to enter. You enter anyway, quietly, accurately, carrying the prophecy not as story but as setting. And then the sentence arrives simple, final, unadorned. You are no longer looking for the sign. You have become the sign. Not a warning, not a brag, a calibration. People who wander near you find their pitch. Rooms that host you find their order. Systems that hire you find their integrity. The field uses you because you made yourself usable, clean, kind, consistent. This is activation. The observer and the prophecy sharing one breath, one cadence, one vow that does not require witness to remain true. You stand in the doorway of a life that no longer asks you to audition. Behind you, the rooms of noise dim like a city after rain. Before you, a quieter brightness waits without hurry. You do not need a sign to proceed. You have become the instrument that makes signs legible. Breath in, breath out, the oldest liturgy, and with each cycle you feel the vow settle deeper, not as burden, but as fit. You are not carrying fire in your hands anymore. You are walking as the hearth. Look at the evidence. The way your timing clicks without strain, the way your words land without shrapnel, the way grief can visit and leave without stealing the silver. You did not force this. You tuned for it. You chose accuracy over spectacle until accuracy grew roots. Now the field treats you like a reliable landmark. Migratory hearts navigate by you. Lost plans circle once and find their runway. You are a quiet geometry in a loud age, and the age cannot deafen what is tuned to eternity. You bless the thresholds you once feared, the conversation that used to ignite your defenses, the account that used to tighten your breath, the silence that used to accuse you of not doing enough. Each becomes a chapel. You enter, light a candle called honesty, and stay long enough for the room to remember what it is. Miracles continue to prefer small doors. You continue to fit them exactly. Do not mistake gentleness for passivity. Your yes has weight now. Your no has mercy. Your presence corrects without humiliation and invites without seduction. You've learned to let the untrue fall away without a trial, to let the true approach without a sales pitch. This is authority without theater, a gravity earned by fidelity. Rooms stabilize because you refuse to trade signal for applause. People breathe easier around you because you keep your frequency clean even when nobody is taking notes. There will be weather. Let it come. Let it have its say. You are not in the business of stopping storms. You are in the business of being the lighthouse that storms have to go around. What you've built inside you is not a fortress. It is a harbor. Traffic will increase. Need will find you. You will give what you have without leaking what you are. This is the difference between charity and coherence. One gives from inventory. The other gives from an ever-renewing spring. Before you step forward, gather what you will actually take. One clean breath. One exact sentence, one faithful practice, one uncompromised boundary, one recurring kindness that does not advertise itself. That is enough. It always was. The field does not require volume, it requires a pitch it can trust. Now place your hand over the heart and listen for the old name that waited until you could carry it without pride. When it rises, nod once. No witness needed. The seal is not wax, it is willingness. The contract is not paper, it is posture. The prophecy does not live on a page, it lives in your gait, your gaze, your readiness to be exact when spectacle tempts you to be loud. Walk on. Walk like someone who knows that possibility is not a crowd to manage, but a choir that follows a true note. Walk like someone who has retired from pretending and been rehired by truth. Walk like the weather changes when you arrive, not because you command it to, but because your clarity leaves the world no choice but to remember its own. The transmission has completed its circuit. You are not just manifesting, you are the frequency that commands all possibility by harmonizing it. Let the worlds assemble around your accuracy. Let the future recognize your breath. The prophecy is sealed. Now let it unfold through you.